Looking for an affordable peated whiskey? Glen Moray is one of the cheapest, readily available single malt scotches that you can find in most countries of the world. They have a wide range of whiskies that are all pretty good for the price, but can they do a cheap peated whiskey? Let's find out. Hey guys, I'm Nath Martyn, the Whisky Scribe. I'm a whiskey enthusiast and I love all things whiskey. But taste is subjective and there are a lot of different whiskies out there. So whether you consider yourself a connoisseur or you're just looking to understand more about whiskey, let's explore it together. If you want to see more from me, please consider subscribing. I put up new videos every week. You can also follow me over on Instagram. I've had some feedback that I've been reviewing a few too many niche whiskies lately, and I need to come back and look at a few more readily available whiskies, which I'm happy to do. Single malt whiskey is an expensive vice, so I love finding really good bang for buck whiskies. Glen Moray is a distillery that's known as an affordable dram. They have several expressions that retail around the $60 to $70 mark here in Australia. And if you're watching from overseas, that's actually cheap for a good single malt here. I even included their port cask finish in one of my 5 affordable whiskies videos a few months ago. But they also have the standard single malt, sherry cask, even Chardonnay cask, which are all entry-level whiskies around about that $60 mark that are still good to drink. So when people ask me for affordable single malt recommendations, I almost always recommend a Glen Moray, because they are a reliable, affordable whiskey that's still gonna taste good for the price you've paid. They won't blow your mind, but they'll be enjoyable for the money you spent. But can they do an affordable peated whiskey? But what is a peated whiskey? Now, peat is a form of decaying plant matter that's found in bogs, and some distillers will use this as part of the whiskey making process. They'll burn the peat, and the smoke from the peat will dry out the barley after malting. Now, when you use that barley that's been dried out with peat smoke, the resulting whiskey actually has a smoky flavour as part of the whiskey. Now, I'm the first to acknowledge that even amongst whiskey drinkers, not everyone likes peat.
Tastes of bog.
For those of us who do, Islay whiskey is sort of the gold standard of peated whiskey. That one region of Scotland, they are renowned for making these big, bold, smoky flavoured whiskies that unfortunately the price tag is often also big and bold. And so there's this impression that cheap peated whiskey just isn't good. Now, I'm also guilty of this subconscious perception because as much as I've praised Glen Moray whiskies plenty, I've never actually tried their peated whiskey. But last week, their already cheap price was on special. So when I had the option to pick this up for 50 bucks, I thought we can give it a try. Now, there isn't a lot of information about how this one is made. Glen Moray is a Speyside whiskey distillery, and that region of Scotland isn't known for using peat. It's not traditional in their process. The distillery really only started working with peated malt in 2010. But this one is made with a combination of peat smoke dried barley as well as their traditional malted barley. So it's not 100% peat. And I'm not expecting something like an Ardbeg, which tastes like a campfire in a glass. A delicious campfire in a glass. Now, it was aged in American oak, or ex-bourbon casks. It's non-age statement and bottled at 40%. The other thing to remember with Glen Moray is they chill filter their whiskey and add colour. Now, at a higher price point, this would kind of annoy me, but this whiskey is designed to be sort of a one-size-fits-all. One that could be drunk neat, in cocktails, or over ice. Higher alcohol whiskies that aren't chill filtered, they can become cloudy if you pour them over ice. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. The whiskey still tastes fine, but distilleries that expect the whiskey to be added to ice will chill filter it, which takes out some of the natural oils so that when you add ice, it doesn't go cloudy. So a lot of people who drink their whiskey neat, they really don't like chill filtration because there's that perception that a lot of those natural oils that get taken out actually carry some of the flavour. Personally, I do prefer a whiskey that isn't chill filtered. I find those oils, they just add a little bit more texture, a little bit more flavour, and it just carries along for a much longer finish. So if you look at the colour on that, peated whiskies that have been aged in bourbon casks, they're usually a little bit lighter than that. So already you can tell that there's been colour added. And then the legs that are dropping down, they're not thick and oily, they're sort of coming down the glass pretty quick. So again, that chill filtration has taken out some of those natural oils. But other than that, you know, it's a nice clear whiskey because they've taken everything out. There is some light smoke on the nose, but there's quite a bit of sweetness as well. It's a pretty even mix, 50-50, of sort of this honeyed sweetness and like a dry smoke. Yeah, it's coming across kind of peppery, which gives me a hint of the sort of peat that they've used. The peat that Islay whiskey distilleries have is quite salty, briny, it's almost medicinal. That sounds disgusting to somebody who doesn't like peat, but it is a major part of the characteristic, and it's just enjoyable. So I would say that they've used a mainland peat just from the nose, but I'll probably know a little bit more once I've tasted it. So the first thing I'm getting from that is literally exactly as it came across on the nose. That ashy sort of smoke and that honeyed sweetness, just as prevalent on the palate. But there's also sort of some kind of some light fruity notes in there. We're talking about things like crisp apple, but it's not big and bold, which you wouldn't expect from a 40% ABV whiskey. That peat is quite light. It's on the back of the palate, light, dry, peppery, sort of like white pepper, sort of smoky. It's very subtle. It's there, but it's not the biggest aspect of this whiskey. I would say if this whiskey had been aged in a sherry cask, you might actually struggle a little bit to know the peat is there. That being said, it doesn't quite taste like a Highland peat either. Highland peat might be a little bit, I guess, thicker, maybe sharper, but that is quite soft. In fact, if you were going to introduce somebody who doesn't like or has never tried peated whiskey and you wanted to introduce them to something like an Islay whiskey, I would say give them this first. If they enjoy this and talk about the smoky notes and want to see more, then you might want to transition them over to Islay.
A few moments later.
So now that it's sat in the glass a little bit more and I've come back to it a few times, that dry, peppery, peated smoke is actually sitting a little bit astringent on the back of the palate. It's turned a little bit bitter. It's not to the point that I don't like it, but if it keeps on developing like that, I would say that's definitely not going to be a good thing. I'm not sure what to say about that. I will say that if you're looking for a big bold peated whiskey, if you're looking for a cheap alternative to an Islay whiskey, this isn't it. It's not hitting that mark. It's subtle. There's quite a bit of the sweetness and even the vanilla that comes across from the bourbon casks, but that peat just isn't quite sitting right. I don't think this works. I don't think this cheap peated whiskey works. Based on the price, if I don't like drinking it neat, I would have said that this would be something that you could add into a cocktail, because I do love an old fashioned, and I think an old fashioned made with a peated whiskey tastes fantastic, but I'm always hesitant to do that because of the price of peated whiskey, and I always feel like I'm wasting it if I'm not drinking it neat. I thought that this might have been an alternative for that, but I think that the peat in it is so subtle that if you were to make an old fashioned cocktail out of it, you wouldn't even pick up the peat so much. This is quite a subtle peat. This is sort of the amount of peat that like a Highland whiskey will use, but they will usually age their whiskey in sherry casks, so you've got that other characteristic to rely on, and the peat just sort of balances with that. But having done this one just in bourbon cask, I think unfortunately it's missing something. I'm gonna say that Glen Moray cheap peated whiskey is a bit of a hard pass for me, which is a shame. I really wanted to like that, but just the way the peat is changing in the glass over time, it's just not working. Now, if we take the Glen Moray peated whiskey out of the equation, as great as it is that Glen Moray has such a wide selection of affordable whiskies, and this tactic seems to be working for them because they are available worldwide, they are readily available in almost any country you go to, and in the UK, they're even on supermarket shelves. But does it damage the reputation of their more premium whiskies? Because they do have premium selection. Now, personally, I've not tried anything more expensive than their 12-year-old, and even that here in Australia is $66. But they do have age statements up to 30 years. They do have special casks and exclusive releases and other special bottlings that go for hundreds of dollars. But would you spend that kind of money on a brand that you've come to associate with a budget whiskey? Or does that accessibility of their core range open you up to trying more of those expensive whiskies? I don't know the answer, though I have never tried any of the more expensive whiskies. If you have tried any of the premium offerings from Glen Moray, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about whether they stacked up or whether they just came across as a slightly older version of a whiskey you could pick up for 70 bucks. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more from me, consider subscribing. If you have any suggestions for other whiskeys for me to review, please let me know. But otherwise, enjoy what's in your glass. Maybe not that one. And slange.